What's your creepiest glitch in the Matrix or unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? Several years ago, I went home, turned on my PC, browsed the web for a bit, literally watched a video about the Matrix, then looked out of my window. Then I suddenly snapped awake sitting in my chair. I looked at my monitor to see that it had turned off. I thought strange. I must have fallen asleep and proceeded to move the mouse to wake my PC from sleep mode. It did not wake up. I was confused until I noticed that the power strip was not even plugged in. It had never been turned on in the first place. That one weirded me out for quite a while. I must have gone home, fell asleep and dreamt the whole thing. At least I hope so. Close bracket. Edit. Small clarification. Edit 2. Added a T that changes the tone drastically. Nice theory though you/anonymous horror. My wife and I were at the local mall shopping. We were walking around in Spencer's and there was a display with a bunch of sexy/slutty boxed outfits. Once we saw them, we both blurted out, "This looks like something Samantha, an acquaintance we both knew from mutual friends, would wear." At the exact same time, we started laughing about it, and as we walked around the corner, the Samantha we were talking about was looking at the exact same rack, but from the other side. We were both like, "What in the fuck?" Exclamation mark. Question mark. Exclamation mark. We hadn't seen her in probably a year or so before then. That left everyone scratching their heads for a bit. I shared this a few years ago when this question was asked last time, and didn't really realize how glitchy in the Matrix it was until people started commenting, haha. In college, I took a hard news/soft news journalism class where one of the assignments was to write an obituary for one of my grandparents. The professor told us to write it on a deceased grandparent. But if all of your grandparents were still alive, we had to choose one. In my case, all of my grandparents were alive. I procrastinated actually doing the assignment until the night before it was due because it seemed like a morbid assignment, especially once all of my grandparents were still alive. Scramming for an easy grandparent to write about, I gave my mom a call and asked her for some basic biographical information about my maternal grandfather. As we were talking about my grandpa's career, my mom couldn't recall the name of one of the companies he worked at. She lectured me about waiting until the last minute to write the assignment because it was late, 10:30 p.m. my grandpa's time. However, she said she would give him a call to see if he was still awake and be able to answer that question once my assignment was due the following morning. When my mom called my grandpa, my grandma answered the phone in a panic. My grandma frantically explained that the paramedics had just arrived and were performing CPR on my grandpa because he had stopped breathing and lost consciousness. My mom was able to stay on the phone with my grandma until they took my grandpa to the hospital, where he was declared dead. In the time my mom and I had been talking on the phone about my grandpa's obituary, he was dying. His death was entirely unexpected at that. Although he was in his 80s, he was the healthiest of my grandparents at the time. We ended up using the obituary I wrote for that writing assignment as his actual obituary. Still freaks me out when I think about the timing. Freaky. Reminds me a bit of this time when I was a kid. I had this little joke novelty thing I'd gotten at a magic shop while on vacation. This was actually so long ago I forget exactly what the thing was supposed to resemble. But it was something you were supposed to open. And it had this plastic thing inside suspended on a rubber band. You were supposed to wind this thing up and close it. You hand it to your victim sucker friend. They open it, which releases tension, allowing the plastic thing to spin around, rattling loudly against the plastic case, and vibrating in their hand, scaring the shit out of them. Anyway, I got all my relatives with this thing because I was a funny little 10-year-old shit. My great aunt and uncle were up visiting and staying at my grandparents' house. I had the thought to try this trick on my great aunt, but something stopped me. It didn't feel right, and I very clearly had the thought I don't want to give her a heart attack. No idea why. She was a bit older, but so were my grandparents, who I already tricked. Well, very shortly after they return home, I get news that my great aunt has had a heart attack and passed away. Seemed like a spooky coincidence, so that one's always stuck with me. About 2 years ago, I went to collect my husband from the ferry after work. My husband got into the car, and as I was driving very slowly out of the car park, we both noticed two people standing a few meters in front of our car. It looked as though they were strangers, older looking professionals, both walking to their separate cars in different areas of the car park. The man was reaching into his side bag and the lady was further ahead than the man, with her head turned to the right. I know the exact positions they were in, because they were completely frozen on the spot. My husband and I sat there watching the frozen strangers, not saying anything to each other, and then all of a sudden it was like someone pressed play, and the two strangers just continued on like nothing had happened. My husband and I promised to each other that we would never forget how weird the experience was. I can't remember exactly how long they stayed frozen like that, but it was long enough to freak us both out. 1985. My ex-wife and I were sleeping. There was a small sliver of light coming in through the window from a street light, so the room and bed were dimly visible. Our black Pomeranian was at the end of the bed asleep. I dreamt that I woke up, reached down to pet him, and he turned into a glossy black bivalve / oyster thing which opened up to reveal rows of gleaming glass teeth. I woke up to my ex backpedaling up the bed over the pillows towards the wall. I asked, "What's wrong?" ? She said, "What is that shiny black clam thing with the teeth at the end of the bed?" ? "Where's the dog?" ? We had had the same nightmare at the same time. This still gives me a chill. I have a jade Buddhist necklace I bought in China about 10 years ago. It disappears for months at a time, only to reappear somewhere obvious like my desk, my dresser, in a drawer I use every day. I just say it goes on a trip and will come back eventually. A friend and I went to a buddy's house for a day party, stayed up playing Halo 2 and hanging out. We all crash in the basement. Our friend who came with me and I got up at the same time. Not like one after each other. We both got up at the same time after being asleep for a few hours and rushed to the bathroom. R was more athletic than me, probably still is, and beat me there. I ran upstairs, barely getting my head over the toilet before puking my guts out. I was doing the same thing in the basement. I was wearing a wooden cross my grandmother mailed me from Romania. I'm not religious, but I appreciated the gift as I had never met her at that point. Cross somehow became detached from the cord, fell on the tile and broke into 2 pieces. So we both call our respective mothers and get picked up. By now it's like 3 to 4 AM. Felt sick up until we left the house. Once I was in the car and a few blocks away, felt perfectly fine. I reported the same thing to me that day over MSN Messenger. Felt perfectly fine after a few blocks. Got the pictures developed a few weeks later. There's a picture of us on the couch rocking some Halo and the whole room looks like it's filled with mist. Super spooky. I've been looking for the pic for a long time and I can't seem to find it anymore. But every few years my sister and I search my mom's photo albums for it. 2 things. Each was witnessed by at least one other person and both were while driving. Once at a stop sign in a neighborhood. All of these little sparkles started swirling around in midair roughly 3 to 4 feet off the ground out of nowhere. The group of them were roughly 2 foot wide by 3 to 4 foot tall. It lasted 3 to 5 seconds and then they were gone. No one was around, and when I asked my passenger if he saw it too, he breathed a sigh of relief and said yes. We spoke about it a little more but there is no reasonable explanation. The second happened when myself and 3 friends were driving down an empty country road. Very straight stretch. A man on a bike appeared. Someone said to watch out for him, so not to hit him, and then he disappeared. Our minds were blown to say the least. Just poof and has gone. I've got several kids and night terrors are always a bit freaky. But once you know it's normal and what it's like, you kind of get used to it. But my middle child had something happen a couple years ago that didn't seem like it could be a night terror. He's almost 5 now and has been pretty advanced in academics for a while. Somehow learned how to read the names of numbers and colors and such, and I accidentally found out one day when I caught him reading what I had written. He came into my room very upset one night. Night terror. Except he was fully awake. I know they can seem like they're awake but they're not. But I had him doing math. 3 plus 2 is 5. Asking very high level questions about things. He seemed fully alert and aware. but he was seeing something my wife and I could not see. Something threatening and scary. The fly was going to get him. He shrieked ear-piercing screeches, consistently turning away and back to the doorway into my master bath, where he saw this thing that was invisible to me. This happened for a few nights. 2. I could only reassure him that he was okay and nothing was there, and we would protect him. "You're okay. You're okay," I'd tell him. He always darted down the hallway between his room and mine for a few days after this, reassuring himself by saying "I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay" as he ran. Poor thing. Freaked my wife and me out completely. I was driving about 50 miles per hour, and a car ran a stop sign on an on-ramp and pulled out right in front of me. I remember bracing for impact, and then I was about 300 yards down the highway and I saw the car at the ramp in my rear view, just about to pull out. Once when we were kids, I had some friends with an Ouija board at the basement of the building where I lived. Through the stairs there was an elevator shaft that had these wide bars where you could stick your arm in them. Typical old elevator design. So one night, they decided to go to the basement to do another Ouija session, and I decided to drop a cup of glass through the shaft, just to scare them off. I let go of the cup, saw it vanish into the darkness, and I never heard the cup hit the ground. I stood there, confused. Next day, I went downstairs at the basement with one of my friends, and the cup was there, placed in the middle of the elevator shaft floor. The cup was upright and intact. I was seriously freaked out by that, because it would be impossible to someone enter the elevator shaft and place the cup there like that. The cup should have broken into pieces, since I threw it from the 10th floor against a cement floor. After my little brother was murdered the next morning, I was talking with a friend and he mentioned this other dude I went to high school with younger brother had died in a car accident a couple weeks before. Later that day I pull out a slip of paper with this other dude's number and name on it from my pants. I vaguely remember running into him a year or so before this at a club, where he gave me his number. I swear I had worn and washed these jeans at least a dozen times since I had run into this dude. I still makes no sense how that paper was there, and I only found it then. I called the dude and we talked a bunch. It really helped me deal with the situation. My wife passed away a year ago today. Had some odd things happen, like a couple of old meaningful pictures show up that I swore were in storage. The strangest one was I vacuumed the carpet, and as soon as I was done a diamond ring was on the ground right where I had just cleaned. It was like she was saying, "Hey, this one is real, don't lose it." Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.